Some wounds run so deep that they change everything about how we live, how we breathe, how we trust, how we nourish ourselves. This is a story about one of those wounds, about a man who lost the person he loved most in the world and decided that living meant risking too much pain. About a woman who understood that sometimes the most broken people need the simplest gesture of care. And about how food, that most basic, most intimate act of sustenance, can become either a prison or a key to freedom. It begins on a rainy night in Manhattan, the kind of night when the city's usual chaos feels muted, when the sound of rain against windows becomes the only soundtrack that matters, when everything feels just a little bit more raw, a little bit more real, a little bit closer to the bone. Jin Yi-jae stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse, looking out at the city below. 35 years old, handsome in that severe way that comes from carrying too much responsibility too young. Expensive suit hanging loose on a frame that had once been powerful, but was now just thin, gaunt. The kind of thinness that comes not from vanity but from slow self-destruction, from choosing, day after day, not to eat, not to live, just to exist in that gray space between being alive and being gone. He'd been doing this for a year now, a year of barely eating, of turning away from every meal, of feeling his body slowly shut down, of knowing what he was doing to himself and not caring, because caring meant feeling, and feeling meant remembering. And remembering meant reliving the worst moment of his life over and over again. His little sister, Ji-ah, 12 years old, full of light and laughter and that particular kind of innocence that makes children believe the world is fundamentally good. She'd been the only person who truly understood him, the only one who saw past the cold exterior to the brother who used to cook eggs with her in their grandmother's kitchen. The brother who made her laugh. The brother who promised to always protect her. And he'd failed. Failed in the most fundamental way possible. Because a year ago, Gia had died. Poisoned, right there at the family dinner table, right in front of him. One moment she was laughing, the next she was gasping. Foam at her lips, body convulsing. Eyes wide with terror and confusion, looking at him, looking at her big brother who'd promised to keep her safe, looking at him as if asking, "Why aren't you fixing this? Why aren't you making it better like you always do?" But he couldn't fix it, couldn't make it better, could only hold her as she died, could only watch the light leave her eyes, could only hear his own voice screaming for help that came too late. Could only survive when she didn't. And that was the thing he couldn't forgive himself for, that he'd eaten the same meal, that he'd been sitting right there, that the poison could just as easily have been on his plate instead of hers, that luck, or chance, or fate, or whatever you wanted to call it, had chosen to take her and leave him. And every day since he'd wondered why. Why her instead of him? Why the innocent child instead of the man who'd already seen too much darkness? Why did he get to keep breathing when she didn't? So he'd stopped eating. Not all at once, not dramatically, just gradually. Pushing food around his plate, taking smaller and smaller portions, skipping meals, until his body began to rebel, until food started tasting like ash, like guilt, like betrayal, until the very act of nourishing himself felt like an insult to her memory, like saying, "My life matters more than yours did," like choosing to survive when she couldn't. His family had tried everything, doctors, therapists, nutritionists. They'd pleaded, threatened, tried to force-feed him. But you can't make someone eat who's decided they don't deserve to live. You can't logic someone out of grief that deep. You can't fix a broken heart with medical intervention. His grandmother, Yun, 70 years old and tougher than most men half her age, had watched her grandson slowly dying. had watched him choose starvation over healing, had watched him turn into a ghost. And she'd made a decision. If traditional methods wouldn't work, she'd try something different, something unusual, something that might seem crazy but couldn't be worse than watching him fade away. She'd organized a secret cooking competition, had contacted the best chefs she could find in New York, had told them she needed someone who could cook with soul, someone who understood that food was more than nutrition, someone who could reach a man who'd forgotten how to taste, how to want, how to live. And that's how Adara Monroe ended up walking into Jin's penthouse on that rainy night. 28 years old, African-American, beautiful in an understated way. Her hair pulled back in a practical bun, her chef's coat covering arms marked with scars, burn scars, the kind every serious cook accumulates over years of working with heat and flame and sharp edges. Evidence of her profession. Badges of experience. She had a 6-year-old son named Malik. Sweet boy, big eyes, the kind of child who still believed in the fundamental goodness of people, who still trusted that adults would keep him safe, who loved his mother fiercely and completely, who was her reason for everything, her reason for working double shifts, her reason for entering cooking competitions she had no business winning, her reason for saying yes to this strange, well-paying job even though everything about it screamed danger. Because Adara knew about dangerous situations, knew about powerful men, knew about the kind of wealth that came with bodyguards and penthouses and rules you didn't question. She'd grown up in Baltimore, had seen enough to understand that Jin Yijai was connected to something dark, something most people called organized crime or the mafia or just the family business. She knew, and she came anyway, because she needed the money, because her restaurant was struggling, because being a single mother in New York City meant making hard choices, meant taking risks, meant doing things that scared you if it meant keeping your child fed and safe. But she had rules, clear boundaries. She'd cook. She'd do her job. But she wouldn't be bought, wouldn't be owned, wouldn't compromise her dignity or her values no matter how much money they offered. She'd learned that lesson the hard way, had learned that survival meant maintaining your sense of self, even when everything else was stripped away. So when she walked into that penthouse for the first time, carrying Malik's hand and a bag of her cooking supplies, she was nervous but determined. Ready to do a job, ready to earn money for her son, ready to prove herself, but not ready for what she found. Jin Yijai collapsed on the marble floor, bodyguards surrounding him, someone shouting about calling an ambulance, someone else saying he hadn't eaten in 7 days. 7 days. The human body can only take so much, and Jin had pushed himself to the edge. Again. For the 100th time, daring death to take him, almost hoping it would, almost ready for it. Adara didn't think, just moved, dropped her bag, told Malik to stay back, pushed through the bodyguards, knelt beside Jin, saw his pale lips, his shallow breathing, his body shutting down. And she knew exactly what he needed, what any starving person needs: sugar, fast-acting, simple, life-saving. "Honey!" she shouted. "Get me honey, now!" Someone ran, someone smart enough to listen to the woman who seemed to know what she was doing. And 30 seconds later, she had a jar of honey in her hands. She unscrewed the lid, dipped her finger in, and touched it to Jin's lips. Just a drop, just a taste, just enough. "Please," she whispered. Not to Jin, not to the bodyguards, just to whatever force controls life and death. Please let him take it. Please let him choose to live. And slowly, so slowly, Jin's lips moved, parted slightly. His tongue touched the honey, and his body responded. Because bodies want to live, even when minds have given up, even when hearts are too broken to beat properly. Bodies fight. Bodies know that life is precious. that every breath matters, that giving up is the real tragedy. Jin's eyes opened, unfocused at first, then gradually clearing, landing on Adara's face, on this stranger leaning over him with honey on her finger and tears in her eyes, on this woman who looked at him like he mattered, like his life had value, like she cared whether he lived or died even though she didn't know him, didn't owe him anything, had no reason to care except that she was human and he was human, and that should be enough. "Don't," Jin whispered, voice barely audible. "Don't make me eat, please. I can't do this." Adara's heart broke, because she understood trauma, understood guilt, understood the kind of pain that makes living feel impossible. She'd lost people too, had survived things that should have destroyed her, carried scars, visible and invisible, that testified to battles fought and barely won. She knew what it meant to want to give up, to feel like the world had taken too much, to question whether surviving was worth the cost. "I know," she said softly. "I know it hurts. I know eating feels wrong, feels like betraying someone, feels like saying their death doesn't matter. But you're wrong. Eating is honoring them. Living is honoring them. Because they can't anymore. And throwing your life away doesn't bring them back. It just wastes the gift you still have. The gift they'd want you to keep." Jin stared at her. This stranger who somehow understood. This woman who saw right through him. Right into the wound he'd been hiding from everyone, and something in him cracked. Just a little. Just enough to let in the tiniest sliver of light. Grandmother Yun appeared then. Elegant despite her age, sharp eyes assessing the situation. Understanding immediately that something significant had just happened. That this woman, this chef she'd hired on instinct, was different. Was exactly what her grandson needed. Was maybe the only person who could reach him. "Get him to his room," Yun ordered the bodyguards. "And you," she said to Adara, "you stay. We need to talk." Adara stood, wiped her hands on her chef's coat, picked up Malik, who'd been watching everything with wide, frightened eyes. "It's okay, baby," she whispered to her son. "The man is going to be okay. Mama helped him." "Is he sick?" Malik asked. That simple child's question that cuts to the truth. "Yes," Adara said honestly. "He's very sick. But not the kind of sick that doctors can fix. The kind of sick that happens in your heart. When you're too sad to want to keep going. That kind of sick. Can you make him better? With your cooking?" Adara looked at this child who believed in her so completely, who thought his mother could fix anything with food and love and persistence. And she thought, maybe I can. Or maybe I'll fail, but I have to try. Because no one deserves to die from grief. No one deserves to starve themselves because they think they don't deserve to live. No one deserves to suffer like that. Not even a man connected to dangerous things. Not even someone whose world I don't understand. He's still human, still deserving of help, still worth saving if he'll let me try. "I'm going to try," she told Malik. "I'm going to cook for him. And maybe, if he lets me, I can help him remember why food matters, why eating matters, why living matters." That night, after Jin had been settled in his room and given IV fluids to keep him alive after the immediate crisis had passed, Grandmother Yun sat down with Adara in the enormous kitchen. A kitchen that clearly hadn't been used in months. That felt cold despite its expensive appliances. That felt more like a showroom than a place where people gathered and cooked and shared meals. "You saved his life tonight," Yun said simply. "Thank you." "I just gave him honey. Any paramedic would have done the same. But you didn't hesitate, didn't ask permission, didn't wait for someone to tell you what to do. You just acted. That's rare. That's valuable. That's what he needs. Adara nodded slowly. Mrs. Yun, with respect, I need to understand what I'm getting into here. I have a son. I have responsibilities. I can't put myself in danger without knowing what I'm risking. So please, tell me the truth. What happened to make your grandson like this? And what exactly do you want me to do about it? Yun was quiet for a long moment. Then she began to speak. And the story she told was heartbreaking, about a happy childhood, about two siblings who adored each other, about Jin teaching his baby sister to cook, about them making eggs together, laughing, being normal, being innocent, and then about betrayal, about family business, the kind Adara had suspected, the kind involving power and territory and violence, about enemies, about someone wanting to hurt Jin's father, and choosing the cruelest method possible, poisoning a child, taking an innocent life to send a message, to prove they could reach anyone, to demonstrate that no one was safe, about Jin sitting right there, eating the same meal, surviving by random chance, about him holding his sister as she died, about the trauma, about the guilt, about him blaming himself for not protecting her, for not somehow knowing, for not dying instead of her, and about the year since, the slow deterioration, the refusal to eat, the way food became associated with death, with poison, with loss, about how every meal was a reminder, every bite was betrayal, about how Jin had essentially been committing suicide in slow motion, and no one could stop him, no one could reach him, no one could make him care about his own life, until tonight, until Adara, until that moment with the honey when something shifted, when Jin looked at her and saw something different, something that made him take that drop of sweetness, that made him choose, even if just for a moment, to live. I need you to do more than cook, Yun said. I need you to teach him that food can be safe again, can be good again, can be something other than pain and death and loss. I need you to show him that eating is not betraying his sister, that living is not disrespecting her memory. I need you to help him heal. And I know that's asking too much. I know that's not what you signed up for. I know you're a chef, not a therapist. But I'm desperate. And you're the first person he's responded to in a year. So please, please try. Please help my grandson remember what it means to be alive. Adara looked at this elegant, desperate woman, thought about her own son sleeping in her arms, thought about what she'd do if Malik was the one suffering. If Malik was the one slowly dying, she'd beg too. She'd ask strangers for help. She'd do anything. Anything to save her child. I'll try, Adara said, but I need you to understand something. I can cook. I can make food that tastes good. Food that brings comfort. Food that carries love. But I can't force him to eat. Can't force him to heal. Can't force him to choose life if he's determined to choose death. All I can do is offer, is be present, is show up every day with meals that say, you matter. Your life has value. You're worth feeding. Beyond that, it's up to him. You understand that? I understand. But you'll try. That's all I can ask. That's more than anyone else has offered. So Adara stayed, moved into a guest suite in the penthouse, set up Malik in a room painted with stars, started learning the massive kitchen, started planning meals, started thinking about what kind of food might reach a man who'd forgotten how to taste, how to want, how to live. She started simple, didn't try to force-feed him, didn't make grand meals, just cooked. Made her grandmother's recipes, the ones she'd learned growing up in Baltimore, the ones that carried memory and love and tradition, the ones that said, I see you. I care about you. I'm offering you nourishment not just for your body but for your soul. and she brought the food to Jin's room, not demanding he eat, not hovering, just placing it where he could smell it, where the aroma might reach him, where maybe, just maybe, some part of him might remember what hunger felt like, might remember that food could be pleasure, could be comfort, could be something other than poison and death. For 3 days, Jin didn't touch anything, just lay in his bed, staring at the ceiling, occasionally looking at the plates Adara left, sometimes letting his eyes close as he smelled what she'd cooked, but never eating, never even trying. Adara didn't give up, didn't get frustrated, didn't take it personally. She understood that healing wasn't linear, wasn't immediate, required patience and consistency, and showing up even when nothing seemed to be working, required believing in someone when they couldn't believe in themselves. On the 4th day, she made chicken soup. Simple. Classic. The kind mothers make when their children are sick. The kind that says, "You're cared for. You're safe. Everything is going to be okay." She brought it to Jin's room, set it on the table beside his bed, and instead of leaving immediately, she sat down in the chair by the window. "You don't have to eat," she said quietly, "but I'm going to sit here for a while, just keeping you company. My son is with your grandmother. They're reading together. She's teaching him Korean. He thinks it's an adventure, learning a new language, meeting new people. He's resilient like that. Kids are. They can adapt to anything as long as they feel safe, as long as they know someone loves them." Jin didn't respond, but his eyes moved slightly, toward her, listening even if he wouldn't admit it. "I used to hate cooking," Adara continued. "When I was young, thought it was boring, tedious, just something you did to not starve. My grandmother would get so frustrated with me. She'd say, 'Girl, food is love. When you cook for someone, you're saying, I want you to live. I want you to thrive. I'm giving you part of myself.' But I didn't understand that. Not until I was older. Not until I'd lost people. Not until I understood that cooking for someone is one of the most intimate things you can do. More intimate than a lot of things. Because you're literally keeping them alive. You're offering sustenance. You're saying, 'Your life matters to me. I want you to keep breathing, keep existing, keep being in this world.'" Still no response from Jin, but she noticed his breathing had changed, become less shallow, like he was actually listening, actually present. "I have scars," Adara said, pushing up her sleeves to show the burn marks, from cooking, from years in kitchens, from accidents and carelessness and just the cost of working with heat and flame. "Every chef has them. We joke that they're like medals, proof that we've earned our place, but really, they're just evidence that we kept going, kept cooking even when it hurt, kept feeding people even when we got burned. Because that's what you do when you care about something. You accept the pain. You accept the risk. You keep showing up." She stood up, walked to the door, paused. "The soup is there if you want it. If you don't, that's okay too. I'll be back tomorrow with something else, and the day after that, and the day after that. Because I'm not giving up on you, even if you've given up on yourself. Someone has to keep believing you matter. Might as well be me." She left, closed the door quietly, went back to the kitchen where Malik was helping grandmother Yun make tea, where her son ran to her and hugged her tight and said, "Did the sad man eat, Mama?" "Not yet, baby, but maybe soon. We just have to keep trying. Keep showing him that people care, that his life matters, that someone wants him to get better." That night, one of the bodyguards came to Adara's room. "He ate," the man said simply. "Not much. Maybe 3 spoonfuls. But he ate. First real food in weeks. Thought you should know." Adara felt tears spring to her eyes. 3 spoonfuls. Nothing to most people. Everything to someone who'd been starving themselves for a year. Everything to someone who'd been choosing death over life. 3 spoonfuls was hope, was progress, was maybe the beginning of healing. "Thank you for telling me," she said. "I'll make breakfast in the morning. Something light. Something that won't overwhelm him. Something that says, 'I'm proud of you. I see you trying. Keep going.'" The next morning, Jin appeared in the kitchen. First time he'd left his room in days. He looked terrible, pale, thin, exhausted. But he was standing. He was present. He was trying. "The soup was good," he said quietly, voice rusty from disuse. "Tasted like, I don't know, like something I remembered. From before, from when things were good, from when I was happy." Adara smiled, gentle, non-judgmental. "I'm glad. Would you like some tea? Something warm to start the day?" Jin nodded, sat down at the kitchen island, watched as she moved efficiently around the space, watched as she hummed softly while cooking, watched as Malik came in, sleepy-eyed, and climbed onto the stool beside him. "Good morning," Malik said cheerfully. "Are you feeling better? Did Mama's soup help?" Jin looked at this child, this innocent, open, trusting child, and something in him softened. "Yes," he said, "your mother's soup helped. She's a very good cook." "The best," Malik agreed proudly. "She makes the best food in the whole world. That's why her restaurant is so popular. Well, it was before we came here, but it will be again. Right, Mama?" "Right, baby," Adara said, setting plates in front of them. Scrambled eggs, toast. Simple, safe. Nothing overwhelming. "Right now, we're here. We're helping. And when we're done, we'll go back home. Back to our restaurant. Back to our life. But for now, this is where we need to be." Jin looked at the eggs, and his face went white. His hands started shaking. Because eggs were what he'd made with Jia. Eggs were the last thing they'd cooked together before she died. Eggs were memory and loss and pain all mixed together. "I can't," he whispered. "I'm sorry. I thought I could. But I can't. Not eggs. Please. Anything but eggs." Adara understood immediately. "Of course. That's okay. You don't have to eat them. I'll make something else. What do you feel comfortable with?" Jin looked at her gratefully, amazed that she didn't push, didn't question, just accepted. "Maybe just toast? Just something simple?" "Toast it is, with butter, jam, honey?" "Honey," Jin said, thinking of that first drop on his lips, that first moment of choosing to live. "Just honey." And so Adara made him toast with honey. And Jin ate it, slowly, carefully, like each bite required courage, like each swallow was a victory. And Malik chattered away about stories grandmother Yun had told him, about dragons and warriors and adventure. And for just a few minutes the kitchen felt almost normal, almost like a place where a family might gather, almost like healing was possible. That was the beginning. Small steps, tiny victories. Jin learning to eat again, learning to let himself be hungry, learning to trust that food could be safe, could be good, could be something other than death. And Adara cooking for him, day after day, meal after meal, learning what he could handle and what triggered him, learning his story, learning to read his silences, learning to see the man underneath the trauma, the brother who'd loved his sister, the person who'd been happy once, who could maybe be happy again if given time and patience and someone who cared enough to keep trying. This was just the beginning. The first steps on a long journey, the first cracks in walls that would take time to fully break down. But it was something. It was progress. It was hope. And sometimes hope is enough to keep going, to keep fighting, to keep believing that healing is possible even when everything seems broken beyond repair. Over the next 6 weeks, something remarkable happened in that Manhattan penthouse. Slowly, gradually, Jin Yijie started to heal. Not completely. Healing never works that way. It's not a straight line from broken to whole. It's messy, non-linear. 2 steps forward and 1 step back. But despite the setbacks, Jin was moving forward, was choosing life more often than death, was starting to remember what it felt like to be hungry, to want food, to anticipate meals rather than dread them. And it was all because of Adara, because of her cooking, because of her patience, because she showed up every single day with food that carried love and the message, you matter. Your life has value. Keep going. She learned his triggers, learned that eggs were impossible, that anything his sister had loved made him freeze up, that certain smells brought back memories too painful to bear, so she worked around them, found other recipes, other flavors, other ways to nourish him. She cooked her grandmother's recipes, the ones from her African American heritage, the ones that carried generations of survival and resilience. Collard greens, cornbread, sweet potato pie, jollof rice, black-eyed peas. Food that had sustained her people through hardship. Food that said, we survive, we thrive. We refuse to let circumstances defeat us. And something about those dishes spoke to Jin. Something about the history they carried, the strength they represented. It resonated with him, made him feel less alone, made him understand that trauma was universal, that survival was possible even when it seemed impossible. Jin started joining them for meals, started sitting at the kitchen island while Adara cooked, started asking questions about her life, about Baltimore, about growing up poor but surrounded by love, about losing her grandmother, about having Malik young and alone, about opening a restaurant, about the burn scars she carried. And Adara asked him questions too. Careful questions, gentle questions, about Gia, about what she'd been like, about the guilt he carried. She was sunshine, Jin said one evening. They were sitting in the kitchen after dinner. Malik was asleep. Grandmother Yun had retired. It was just the two of them. That's what I called her. My sunshine, because she lit up every room. Everyone loved her. She was kind and funny and smart and just good, pure good. And she died. And I lived. And that doesn't make sense. That's not fair. No, Adara agreed. It's not fair. Terrible things happen to good people all the time. The world is cruel and random. But her death doesn't mean your life is less valuable. Doesn't mean survival is betrayal. You have to keep living with the grief. But you do have to keep living. Because dying doesn't bring her back. Doesn't honor her. It just wastes the gift you still have. How do you do it? Jin asked. How do you keep going when life is hard? When everything feels impossible? Adara pushed up her sleeve, showed him the burn scars. These aren't from one accident. They're from years of working in kitchens, from getting burned and healing and going back to work the next day, from choosing to keep cooking even though I knew I'd get hurt again. Because that's life. You accept that pain is part of it, that scars are part of it. But you keep going anyway. Because the alternative is giving up. And giving up means missing all the good stuff. Missing the people who love you. Missing the chance to make a difference. I refuse to quit. Refuse to let circumstances defeat me. So I keep cooking. Keep feeding people. Keep showing up even when it hurts. Because that's what strength looks like. That's what love requires. Jin looked at her, really looked at her. And he saw someone extraordinary. Someone who'd survived her own traumas, who understood pain intimately, but who'd chosen to keep going, to keep loving. And he felt something shift in his chest, something warm, something that felt almost like hope, almost like the beginning of feelings he'd thought died with his sister. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for being here, for not giving up on me, for believing I could heal." "You're welcome. But Jin, you need to understand something. I'm helping you because it's the right thing to do. But this is still a job. Your grandmother is paying me, and when you're better, when you don't need me anymore, I'm going back to my life, back to my restaurant. This isn't permanent. This isn't more than it is. You understand that, right?" Jin nodded, but something in his eyes looked hurt, disappointed, like maybe he'd been hoping for something different. But she was right. This was a job, and he had no right to expect more. The moment passed. They cleaned up, said goodnight, went to their separate rooms. But something had changed. Some line had been crossed. They were becoming more than employer and employee. Something neither wanted to name, but both felt growing between them. 3 days later, Adara made jollof rice, the West African dish that had been her grandmother's specialty. That carried memory and tradition and love. She made a large pot, enough for everyone, because food was meant to be shared, meant to bring people together. When she served it that evening, Jin took one bite, and his face changed. Something in his expression cracked open, and tears started streaming down his face. Not quiet tears, but huge, gulping sobs, the kind that come from deep in the chest, the kind that carry years of suppressed grief. Everyone froze, unsure what to do. Adara moved first, sat down beside Jin, didn't touch him, didn't try to stop his crying, just sat close. "Present, steady." "It tastes like love," Jin choked out between sobs. "Like someone cares, like I matter. And Gia, the day she died, we'd eaten together. I survived and she didn't. And I felt guilty for surviving. Guilty for every bite I took after that. But this tastes like forgiveness, like permission, like maybe it's okay to keep going, like maybe eating isn't betraying her, like maybe she'd want me to live. Is that crazy? Or is that real?" "It's real," Adara said softly. "Of course she'd want you to live. She loved you. And people who love us don't want us to suffer after they're gone. They want us to remember them, to honor them, but also to keep living, to keep experiencing joy. That's how you honor the dead. Not by dying too, but by living well. That's what she'd want." Jin nodded, wiped his eyes, took another bite, let himself taste it fully, let himself feel hungry without guilt, let himself eat without shame. Malik, who'd been watching with his big, serious eyes, got up, walked over to Jin, handed him a napkin. "It's okay to cry," the little boy said solemnly. "Mama says crying means you're brave, means you're letting feelings out instead of keeping them trapped inside, means you're healing." Jin took the napkin, looked at this child who offered comfort without judgment. "Thank you, Malik. You're very wise for 6 years old. Your mother is raising you well." "She's the best mama in the world," Malik said with absolute certainty. "She always knows what to do. That's why I knew she could help you." Jin looked at Adara, and she saw something in his eyes. Something that looked a lot like love, like someone who was starting to feel again, starting to want again, starting to imagine a future that included more than just survival, and it terrified him. Because wanting things meant risking loss. Caring about people meant opening yourself up to grief, and he'd already been destroyed once. But he also couldn't stop the feelings, couldn't ignore what was growing between them. Couldn't deny that she'd become essential to him in ways that went far beyond cooking. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, Jin couldn't sleep. He ended up in the kitchen, found Adara there too, also unable to sleep, making tea. Couldn't sleep either? He asked. She turned, smiled slightly. No, too much on my mind. This job is more complicated than I expected. More intense. I know, I'm sorry. I know this has been hard on you. And I'm grateful. More grateful than I know how to express. You're not difficult. You're hurt. There's a difference. And yes, this has been intense, but also meaningful. I feel like I'm making a real difference. Adara, I need to tell you something. And I know I probably shouldn't. Know it complicates everything. But I can't keep pretending. Can't keep acting like I don't feel what I feel. Adara's heart started racing, because she knew what was coming, had felt it building. Don't, she said quietly. Please don't. Because once you say it, everything changes. I need this to stay simple. Stay professional. Because I can't afford complicated. Can't afford to let my heart get involved. Can't afford to risk my son's stability. But you do care, Jin said. Not a question, a statement. You do feel something. This isn't just professional anymore. Even if that's true, Adara said, it doesn't matter. Because you're my employer. Because there's a huge power imbalance. Because you're connected to dangerous things. Because my son's safety has to come first. Because I have a life to go back to. Because I'm scared. Scared of getting hurt. Scared of falling for someone who lives in a world I don't understand. I've been hurt before, Jin. Been in situations where powerful men thought providing for me meant controlling me. And I swore I'd never let that happen again. And I won't. I can't. Even for you. Jin felt like he'd been slapped. But he understood. Understood her fear. Understood her need for independence. Understood that his world was dangerous. I understand, he said quietly. And I respect it. I respect you. Your strength. Your boundaries. That's part of why I care about you. Because you're strong. Because you know your worth. I admire that. Even when it means I can't have what I want. They stood there. Rain falling outside. Both feeling the weight of everything unsaid. Everything impossible. I should go to bed, Adara said finally. Tomorrow is another day. Good night, Jin. Good night, Adara. She left, feeling her heart ache, feeling the pull toward him, and hating herself a little for feeling it, for letting her guard down. Unknown to either of them, someone was watching. Uncle An, Jin's father's brother, the man who'd expected to take over when his brother died, the man who'd been plotting for years to remove his nephew, and he'd found the perfect weapon, Adara, the woman who mattered to Jin. All An had to do was make Jin think she'd betrayed him, make him doubt her. And Jin would destroy himself, would stop eating again, would hand over everything. So An made his move, brought in someone, a chef he paid off. Someone who could tamper with food, add something that wouldn't kill but would cause hallucinations. Paranoia, the kind of reaction that would make Jin think he'd been poisoned again. It happened 3 days later. Adara made soup for lunch, handed it off to the kitchen staff while she took Malik to the park. Standard routine. But while she was gone, An's person made the switch. Replaced the safe soup with soup dosed with a hallucinogen. Something that would make Jin paranoid, would make him see threats that weren't there. Jin ate the soup. Didn't notice anything at first. But then the hallucinations started. He saw Jia, saw her dying, heard her voice. Why did you let them poison me? Then he saw Adara, but twisted, laughing, saying, You're so easy to fool. This was always about money. You were just a paycheck. Jin tried to fight the hallucination, but the drug was strong, and his trauma was strong. He started to believe it. started to think maybe Adara had betrayed him. When Adara came back from the park, she found chaos. Jin raging, throwing things, accusing her. "Get her out!" he shouted. "Get her away from me! She tried to kill me, just like they killed Jia. She's been lying all along." Adara stood there frozen, shocked, confused. "Jin, I don't understand. I would never hurt you. You know that. You know me. This doesn't make sense." "Of course you'd deny it. I was a fool to trust you. Get out. Take your son and get out. I never want to see you again." The bodyguards moved toward her, firm, making it clear she needed to leave. Malik started crying. "Mama, what's happening?" "I don't know, baby," Adara said, picking him up, feeling her own tears starting. "But we need to go, right now." She was escorted out, not allowed to pack. Just pushed out the door. Out of Jin's life. Just like that. After weeks of work. After all the progress. Just over. She stood on the street in the rain, holding Malik. Crying. Not understanding. Not knowing what had gone wrong. Just knowing that something terrible had happened. That all her work had been destroyed. And inside the penthouse, Jin collapsed. The hallucination fading. Reality returning. And with it, doubt. Had he just made a terrible mistake? Had he accused an innocent woman, but he couldn't take it back? Not yet. Not while his head was still spinning. So he sat alone. In the kitchen where Adara had cooked for him, and he wondered if he'd just destroyed his own chance at happiness. Outside, Adara stood in the rain with Malik. Both soaked, both crying, both not knowing what came next. "Mama," Malik whispered, "is Mr. Jin going to be okay? Is he going to die?" "I don't know, baby," Adara admitted, voice breaking. "I don't know. I can't help him anymore. He doesn't want me, and I don't know how to fix what's broken." They stood there in the rain. Two people caught in the crossfire of something cruel, something designed to hurt, something that had succeeded. This was the betrayal. This was when hope turned to despair, when healing became hurt, when progress was destroyed by suspicion. But this wasn't the end. Not quite, because somewhere in the chaos, somewhere in the pain, there was still a chance, still hope that truth might win, that love might prove stronger than suspicion. The question was, would Jin figure it out in time? Would he discover the truth? Would he find the courage to try again? To trust again? To choose love over fear? That remained to be seen. That was the question hanging in the rain-soaked Manhattan air. Could broken people really heal? Or was the damage too deep? Only time would tell. Only choices yet to be made would determine the outcome. Only Jin's willingness to fight for what mattered would decide whether this story ended in tragedy or redemption. And that's where we left them. In that moment of crisis. That moment when everything hung in the balance. That moment when hope seemed lost but wasn't quite gone. Not yet. Not quite. Jin spent 3 days in hell. 3 days of not eating again. 3 days of hallucinations fading only to be replaced by clarity that made everything worse. Because clarity meant understanding what he'd done. Understanding that he'd accused an innocent woman. Understanding that he'd destroyed the best thing in his life because he'd let fear control him. On the 3rd day, Grandmother Yun came to his room. Didn't knock. Just walked in. Found him lying in bed. Staring at the ceiling. Not living. Just existing. "Get up," she said. No gentleness. Just command. "We need to talk." "Leave me alone, Grandmother." "Too bad. Not after what you did. Not after you threw out the woman who saved your life. You get to face what you did. Now get up." Something in her voice made Jin obey. He saw fury in her eyes, disappointment, pity. "I want you to look at this." She handed him a tablet. Security footage. From the day you think Adara poisoned you, watch it. Then tell me if you still believe she betrayed you. Jin watched. Saw Adara cooking, tasting the soup, leaving with Malik. All normal. Nothing suspicious. But then, after she left, he saw someone else. Someone who took Adara's soup. Replaced it. Someone who worked quickly, efficiently. Then he saw who that person reported to. Saw them go to Uncle On's office. Saw On paying them, smiling, congratulating them. Jin felt punched. Adara hadn't poisoned him. On had orchestrated everything, had used Jin's trauma against him. Keep watching, Grandmother Yun said grimly. There's more. More footage. Older footage, from a year ago, from the day Jia died. Saw On in the kitchen, tampering with food, adding something to Jia's plate specifically. Jin couldn't breathe. On had killed Jia, his own niece, a 12-year-old child, had murdered her to hurt Jin's father. And Jin had blamed himself for a year, had starved himself with guilt over something that wasn't an accident. That was deliberate murder. He killed her, Jin whispered. He killed Jia, and he tried to kill me too. Tried to make me think Adara did it. Yes, Grandmother Yun said. And you let him. You let him manipulate you. You let him destroy your chance at happiness because you were too afraid to trust. And now Adara is gone. And it's your fault. Because you chose suspicion over trust. Chose fear over love. Jin felt tears streaming. She was right. He'd destroyed it. Had let his trauma win. What do I do? He asked, voice breaking. You start by eating, Grandmother Yun said firmly. You prove you want to live. You prove what Adara did mattered. Then you fight. You fight for her. You fight for yourself. You fight against On. You prove you're stronger than your trauma. That's how you fix this. If it can be fixed. If she's willing to give you another chance. Which she might not be. And you'd have no right to complain. Jin nodded. Stood up. Walked to the kitchen. Found containers of food Adara had made. Jollof rice, the dish that had made him cry. That had started his healing. He heated it up. Sat where they'd talked. Where she'd shown him her scars. Where she'd taught him that survival required accepting wounds. He took a bite. Tasted it fully. Let himself eat without shame. And he made a decision. He would fight. Would confront On. Would show that Adara's work hadn't been wasted. And then he would find her. Would apologize. Would beg for forgiveness even though he didn't deserve it. The next day, Jin went to On's office, walked in without knocking, looked at his uncle with cold eyes. We need to talk, Jin said, voice steady. About Jia, about the poisoning, about Adara, about everything you've done. On smiled slightly. Jin, what a surprise. Cut the act. I know you killed Jia. Know you poisoned Adara's soup. I have proof, security footage, evidence that will destroy you. So you have two choices. Leave quietly, disappear forever, or I bring this to the council, and their punishment will be much worse than exile. Choose. On's smile faded. You have no proof. Jin pulled out the tablet, showed him everything. Still think I'm bluffing? On's face went white. I did it for the family. Your father was weak. Jia was collateral damage. Business requires sacrifice. She was 12 years old, Jin said, voice breaking. My sister. And you murdered her. I'm not going to kill you. I'm not going to become you. So I'm giving you a choice. Leave. Now. Tonight. Forever. Or face the council. On saw Jin meant it. Fine. I'll leave. But Adara won't come back. Won't forgive you. So you'll be alone. Maybe. Jin said. Maybe she won't forgive me. But at least I'll know I tried. At least I'll know I fought for what mattered. That's more than you'll ever have. Jin left, feeling lighter, feeling like he'd finally honored Jia's memory by seeking justice. Now came the hard part. Finding Adara. He went to her restaurant in the East Village, saw her through the window, cooking, moving like it was home. He knocked, waited, hoping she'd listen. Adara looked up, saw him. Her expression hardened. She opened the door slightly. What do you want, Jin? To apologize, to explain, to show you that I know I was wrong. Please. 5 minutes. You threw me out, Adara said, voice cold. Accused me of poisoning you, after weeks of caring for you. After I brought my son into your dangerous world, you accused me, threw me out like garbage, traumatized my child, and now you want 5 minutes? No, Jin said honestly. 5 minutes can't fix what I did. But I want to try. Want to show you evidence that you were set up. That my uncle poisoned the food. That he killed Jia. Want to show you that I know you're innocent. Please. Just 5 minutes. Adara looked at him, saw sincerity, saw pain. Against her better judgment, she opened the door wider. 5 minutes. Then you leave. Jin showed her the footage. I should have trusted you, should have believed in you, but I let my trauma control me, and I'm sorry. I want you to know that your work wasn't wasted. I'm eating. Every day, I'm choosing to live. I'm being the person you believed I could be. Adara watched the footage, saw the truth, and she felt anger. At Anne, at Jin, at herself for caring so deeply. You hurt me, she said quietly. You hurt Malik. Made us feel unsafe. And I don't know if I can forgive that. Don't know if I can trust you again. Don't know if I want to be part of your world when it comes with enemies who'll use me as a weapon. I know. I understand. I'm not asking you to come back as my employee, just asking for a chance to be in your life in whatever capacity you'll allow. You taught me how to live again, how to trust again, and I'll be grateful for that forever. Whether or not you forgive me. Tears streamed down Adara's face. She wanted to forgive him, but she was scared. I need time, she said finally. I need to think. This isn't something I can decide right now. Take all the time you need, Jin said. I'll wait. Just know that I'm here. I'm choosing to live. I'm being the person you believed I could be. Thank you. For everything. He turned to leave, but a small voice stopped him. Mr. Jin? Malik stood there, in pajamas, looking at Jin with big, serious eyes. Are you better now? Are you eating? Are you choosing to live? Jin knelt down. Yes, I'm better. I'm choosing to live, because your mother taught me how. She's amazing. I know, Malik said. She's the best. But she's been sad, since you sent us away. So if you made her sad, you need to make her happy again. Can you do that? Can you trust her? Yes, Jin said. I can do that, I promise. Okay then, you should stay. You should eat with us. Mama's making dinner. Stay. Jin looked at Adara, silently asking permission. She sighed, then nodded. You can stay. For dinner. This doesn't fix everything, but you can stay. Jin stayed, watched Adara cook. She made jollof rice. When she set it in front of him, he saw something in her eyes. Not quite forgiveness, but maybe hope, maybe possibility. Jin took a bite, tasted it fully. Thank you, for this meal, for this chance. You're welcome. Now eat. Prove you meant it. And he ate, every bite, showing her he meant it. Malik watched, smiling, happy to see them together again. Over the next month, Jin proved himself, not through grand gestures, but through small, consistent actions. He came to the restaurant every day, sometimes just to be present, to show Adara he was choosing her, choosing Malik, choosing this. He told her about An's exile, about justice being served for Jia, about how discovering the truth had freed him. He got to know Malik, read him stories, played with him, became someone the boy trusted. And slowly, Adara's walls came down. She started trusting again, started believing that maybe Jin really had changed. 3 months later, Jin came to the restaurant with a box. Keys to the penthouse. I'm offering them to you, not as a job, but as an invitation. An invitation to make that space a home, to bring Malik, to be family, if you want, if you're ready, if you'll take the risk. Malik was watching with hopeful eyes. Mama, I think we should say yes. I think we should be family. Adara felt tears threatening, because yes, she did want that. Did want to take the risk. Yes, she said. We'll try. We'll take the keys. We'll build something. Together. All 3 of us. Family. Jin smiled. Thank you for giving me another chance, for teaching me that love is worth the risk. He pulled her into a hug. She let herself be held. Let herself believe that maybe this was right. Malik joined the hug. Family, he said happily. We're family now, forever and ever, right? Right, Adara and Jin said together. Forever and ever, family. And it was true. They became family. Not instantly, not without continued work, but truly, deeply, permanently. They became people who loved each other, who supported each other, who built a life together. Jin continued healing, continued eating, continued choosing life. He got therapy, dealt with his trauma properly, learned to trust, learned to love. Adara kept cooking, kept running her restaurant, kept creating food that healed. She brought her strength to Jin's world, brought her insistence that dignity mattered more than wealth. And Malik grew up knowing he was loved, knowing he was safe, knowing he had 2 parents who chose each other every day. Years later, when people asked how they'd found each other, they'd tell the truth. Through food. Through a spoonful of honey on cracked lips. Through patience and refusing to give up. Through choosing to trust even when trust was terrifying. Through believing that broken people could build something whole. And they'd look at each other, Jin and Adara, and remember. That first night. That drop of honey. That moment when cooking became more than just food, became love, became healing, became the beginning of everything that mattered. That was their story, built from impossible circumstances, built through choice and effort and refusing to quit. Built because sometimes the most broken people are exactly the ones who understand each other's cracks, who can offer gentleness where others see only damage, who can believe in healing when everyone else has given up. That was what they built. That was what proved that healing is possible, that love can exist even in darkness, that broken people can create something beautiful, that sometimes all it takes is one spoonful, one taste, one moment of choosing life over death, one person refusing to give up. And that was enough. More than enough. It was everything. Sometimes healing begins with a single spoonful, and sometimes a person just needs someone to believe they deserve to live one more day. Do you believe that painful memories can be healed through kindness? Has anyone ever given you permission to keep living? Share your story. It might reach someone who needs to hear it.